Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Clock Management. It is Kevin Tompkins here. We are almost through another week 5 here. Another week of the NFL season, 5 data points. But today we're not going to go through like some of the, interesting things about the slate. We're a third through the NFL season, so I think it's important to kind of do a little soul searching here to, see what has been presented by some of these NFL running backs. I have been a zero RB guy in my life. Never drafted a running back in my life. But you know what? The ones that are drafted after the 7th round, absolutely hitting this year. Guys like J.K. Dobbins, guys like Javonte Williams, guys like Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. And then you're getting your spot starts, guys like Rachaad White, guys like Michael Carter. Obviously, Rico Dowdle blew up in a massive way yesterday. So look, these are the guys that zero RB, this is, if you're in a managed league, these are guys you were able to pick up off of waivers, like the Whites, like the Dowdles, to get some points from your running back position when guys are going down at a very alarming rate. Exactly. Rachaad White saved my ass this week. Yeah, absolutely. These running backs and being able to take advantage of some of the chaos in the NFL season, it's incredibly important because you can't get, your team that you drafted, you're not going to be going through the entire season with all of those guys. You're going to have to find waiver wire guys. You're going to have to find guys that can spot start. Bye weeks stink. Not everybody that you drafted on your bench is going to be, certainly relevant as well. So that's why picking up a lot of these guys and being able to use them strategically throughout the season to help you get through some of the weeks where maybe your roster is a little bit thin. Say you had, Drake London or Tucker Kraft or guys, you need some point production to get you, Bijan Robinson, big one that was on bye this week. So definitely with the running backs, I want to take a look at, a very large sample of some of the starting running backs in the NFL and kind of just go through where we're at with them, what their situation is, how it's kind of, played out through the season. So let's just go and start it off here with one of the guys that absolutely crushed yesterday. That would be Mr. Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, Bill, as some of the kids like to call him. Bill was awesome in week 5. Look, he separated himself from Chris Rodriguez. He separated himself from Jeremy McNichols, 14 for 111 and 2 touchdowns. What we hadn't seen from him is some of the separation in just getting on the field. It's really a 3-way backfield with Austin Eckler, obviously out for the season, but we saw it's been kind of a gross situation where Chris Rodriguez would play in the first 2 series. And then, Bill would come in, Jeremy McNichols would come in passing down situations. So it was really tough to start a guy like Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. So maybe not a lot of people outside of best ball got the benefits of what he did, but 27 fantasy points yesterday, RB5 heading in to Monday's game, Chiefs Jaguars. Definitely awesome to see. So as far as what I'm going to grade him as, we are going to give him a very solid, if you're looking at the top bar, he might be spoiled, but we're going to give him a B. I think it's a little bit incomplete right now because I want to see something like that. I want to see what we saw in week 5 keep going. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case because I feel like it's going to be more of a game-by-game basis for the Washington Commanders and how they manage a running game. But it is, on the other hand, it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle after you have a game like this where the intent was to give him some separation from 2 of the other backs. Look, Chris Rodriguez, he's a guy that's been cut twice by the Commanders already. He's been efficient in some spots, but he's not a guy that I don't think you're going to be building an offense around. Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, on the other hand, warranted them having to trade Brian Robinson to kind of clean up the running back room a little bit, hoping they could get more out of the position. So I think that was a very bullish sign, and it's something we really should have seen coming a little bit more just from that data point exclusively. But now, it's not going to be like a perfect situation for the Commanders, But just looking at some of the per carry stuff this season, at least in week 5, second, I believe that's the fourth most rushing yards over expectation. And then on the season, amongst all qualified running backs, first in success rate. That's 60.5%. Now, success rate on NFL Next Gen Stats, that is the percentage of runs that have a positive EPA. So 60.5% of Corey Krosky Merritt's runs are positive EPA plays that are helping the team score points. So look, that's what we want. If you are that efficient as a running back, you're going to be on the field. 6.6 yards per carry right now, well over his expected yards per carry based on some of the situations. I think he's well into the RB2 category right now. I don't think you have to worry too much about Chris Rodriguez and about Jeremy McNichols going forward. I'm just a little bit worried about the coaching as far as getting him on the field to be able to do that. Last week it was yesterday, 47.5% of the snaps. That was a season high for Corey Krosky Merritt. He was about weeks 1 through 4, 33%, 22%, 40%, 35%. So up to a 48% snap rate this week. And then he got on the field much more in the passing game as well. Also a season high, 38% of routes too. So things are looking up for Corey Krosky Merritt. I still think it's a little bit incomplete right now in terms of getting him on the field, but you have to like what you see. The next running back here that I do want to talk about here, Javonte Williams, famously the cover of the video today. And look, I think I kind of spoiled it with the the graphic A+. I think at this point, we want to dog Javonte Williams for some of the injuries that he's had, and maybe some of the lack of explosiveness that he had last season in Denver, where he was mainly getting by on a lot of the receiving stuff. But going through some of the advanced stuff with Javonte Williams, he is I believe he's number 2 in success rate going forward. I'm really excited the fact that Jaden Blue didn't really get on the field that much for the Cowboys, but with the offense right now in desperate need without CeeDee Lamb. I mean, it's been George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert, pretty much kind of riding the train of the offense right now. But in terms of, last week, 135 yards rushing, it's really hard to argue with a guy that's going to be putting up 72 rushing yards over expectation. And then going through, what he's done this season, 5.7 yards per carry. He shouldn't have got tackled behind. That's kind of some of the long speed stuff that maybe is a bit concerning with Javonte Williams, but the opportunity is there, and we obviously want the opportunity. But just as far as his efficiency, he's been right there, and maybe some of the receiving stuff hasn't been totally there for Javonte Williams. He has 17 catches on 18 targets. Like, that's totally fine. But the fact that, we're looking at 5.7 yards per carry right now, had his first 100-yard game. He's been getting into the end zone quite a bit. Miles Sanders is dinged up. Jaden Blue just got on the field for his first game yesterday. I think it's really bullish for Dallas in terms of, just absolutely consolidating a lot of that work for Javonte Williams. So I'm very excited about, the prospect of him. And that's a guy you drafted in probably the 7th round or so. First 2 backs, was Corey Krosky Merritt, obviously very, very late in draft season. You had to kind of maybe draft him in the 9th, 10th round. But Javonte Williams, there's no bad with this, at least right now. You have to love everything that you are seeing out of him. And then to the next back here, we're going to be looking at Marion Hampton. Now, this one's a little bit dicey. Everything has been really good for him in terms of his workload. But what you hate to see is the fact that he left the Washington game in a boot. So that's not great. But now what we need to be worried about is the fact that this could be a multi-week thing with Marion Hampton. Obviously, they have Hassan Haskins, Kamani Vidal, and that having to worry about that kind of dichotomy where Kamani Vidal's more like a passing down back. Hassan Haskins probably should not be seeing the field and receiving down. So that's very easy to parse when you're looking at Hassan Haskins is probably due for the early down work in the event that Hampton does miss time. And then Kamani Vidal is kind of the receiving back. You're probably adding Haskins more than you are Vidal, but you're not expecting anything because we kind of got a perfect storm with some of the rushing stuff, this week when you have three backs that are, that were available on the wire with Dowdle, with Rashad White to an extent, and then Carter. If Haskins were starting like in this upcoming week with those three backs like available, he would be a distant fourth behind Carter. But I still do think that it's very interesting that an offense that is so pass heavy, a Greg Roman offense that if you had asked me if the Greg Roman offense would be, first in pass rate or expected with Justin Herbert, I would have told you you're crazy. But that's like the reality that we're in right now. So I wouldn't be going like super crazy for Hassan Haskins bids on the waivers. But I'd still be adding him if you have a bench spot, if you have need at flex and you want a guy that's going to probably get, I'd say 60% of the rushing attempts. If it were him and Vidal, they don't pick anybody up. I think that's totally fine to be able to plunk 5 to 7% of your fat, maybe upwards of 10, depending on how bad you need it. But in terms of Hampton overall, I mean, everything you love to see with Amari and Hampton. Let me pull him up right here. This is all on Next Gen Stats, by the way. And then some of the efficiency stuff, how many games here above? So the last three where he's really had the role, plus 11, plus 102, minus 18. That was kind of a tough game script for the Chargers, kind of getting behind there. But overall, we're looking at, very positive stuff. In terms of success rate, average is 38%. So he's a little bit above average there, like 44% is pretty solid there, especially for a rookie who's getting as much opportunity as he's gotten. It's just obviously you have to worry about some of the injury stuff with, leaving the Washington game in a boot. So Dave, good to see you. Hampton, obviously, I think we have to give him a pretty solid A+ grade here just because everything he's done so far, we love. We know that the offense is going to revolve around him in the running game when he is active. It's just this next couple weeks is going to be a little bit suspect, knowing that, it's obviously going to be a lower leg injury. That's probably going to maybe keep him out a week, maybe two. Then going over to the next back here, Michael Carter. Michael Carter was pretty, he had 2 touchdowns. Some of the efficiency stuff wasn't like super great for Michael Carter, but the backfield kind of shook out. If you had read the Angles and Leverage article that I put out every Saturday, I kind of predicted the backfield in terms of Bam, Zonovan Knight getting some early down stuff, but like taking a little bit off the top for Michael Carter. And then, and then Michael Carter just getting, some of the goal line stuff, getting some of the receiving stuff, and Murray Mercado staying pretty much as like a third down back. And then he might have put himself in the shadow realm with dropping that touchdown before the goal line. So, I mean, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. But that gives him, DeMarcado 82 yards. But yeah, for Michael Carter, 18 for 51, had a touchdown, and then 5 catches for 22 yards. Like, that's nothing as far as like compiling from both sides of the ledger, receiving and rushing. Like, that's not bad. Especially if something does happen to DeMarcado, it's interesting to see if that backfield would just shift to Michael Carter taking a lot of not just the receiving stuff, but 60% of the rushing attempts. I think it's very much in play. Bam Knight's Zonovan Knight he's been somewhat relevant since like 2022, I believe, because he was on the Lions, he was on the Jets for a little bit there. So, like I think he's just a space filler right now. Not that Michael Carter isn't. Michael Carter was on the practice squad while James Conner and while Trey Benson were healthy. Emari DeMercado was primarily a special teams player. The first 2 weeks of the season, DeMercado didn't play an offensive snap. And then he played one offensive snap in week 3. And then Connor went down, obviously. Trey Benson went down. So the kind of need is there for running backs to kind of take up some of these roles here. And it was very, at least I thought it was well known that DeMercado would say, stay in his role as like the third down guy, and then Michael Carter would be the one because he has had starting experience with the Jets in terms of taking like a decent workload. So he seemed like the best option there. And then if you needed to spell him at times, yeah, Bam Knight was going to be, that Chris Rodriguez type where you're just praying you get some of the efficiency that like Rodriguez would provide off of Carter. And that game went sideways after DeMercado dropped that ball. Yeah, that he is for sure a special decision maker. I mean, that's you look up the draft profile for him. I'm sure either Daniel Jeremiah or somebody there was talking up his decision making for sure. So we'll see what happens with DeMercado. But I think Michael Carter is like totally fine as like an RB2 going forward, unless they go out and get somebody like I like to see, because I don't think it's like complete yet, where it's not quite a known commodity for Carter, but he's like the best that we have in Arizona right now. So like I think that's totally fine and totally worth a flex play on rosters. I'm just a little bit worried that some of the efficiency stuff is not going to be there with the Arizona Cardinals. And then obviously seeing what we have with DeMercado. Let me go to the next running back here, Ashton Jeanty. Obviously, Jeanty had his massive blow up game in week 4. Was looking to kind of, follow some of that momentum. 14 for 67, like fine. And then added, some of his best receiving yardage of the season, 5 for 42. So like, I think that's totally fine for a guy like Ashton Jeanty, knowing that the Raiders are not going to be like a super fruitful, offense for like big time production that we thought they were going to be with Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator with Pete Carroll. Certainly Geno Smith has been one of the worst quarterbacks in football. That certainly does not help anything with, as far as, I think I lost my window here. Let me pull that back up here. I'm going to pull that back up here. Give me just 1 second. I don't know why I lost that. Boom. All right. So yeah, as far as like Jeanty, like I'm not super concerned because of the talent there. But what I am concerned is the offensive environment going forward for Jeanty, where you want to see some efficiency that's going to leak over into the passing game because, run to set up the pass. That's like one of the biggest staples of like professional football. And that's clearly, with Pete Carroll, with Chip Kelly, obviously his offenses have slowed down since Chip Kelly came from, he went to the 49ers and the Eagles and then went back to college, where his offenses have slowed down considerably since then. They used to be one of the faster paced offenses in the NFL, and there was some inkling that we could see that, but that was no guarantee. Last couple of weeks in terms of Jeanty's efficiency have been pretty good. Plus 58, plus 12 rush yards over expectation there, and then he's about at a 41.5 success rate. But on the season, he's about like at the break even mark for rush yards over expectation. So he's been like fine. I know people drafted him in the like beginning of the second round, sometimes in the late first, and you're clearly not getting that. But I think you're still in a decent spot where once Ashton Jeanty kind of gets going here, I think we're really in for something that could be league winning despite the offensive environment. So for that, I will be giving Action Genty at least a B minus right now. I think it's a good spot for him. I think that the offense will figure out a way to get a little bit better, the environment wise. They're gonna have to do something with Gino. Like, if this is the Gino that we're gonna be getting, or about that, I wouldn't be surprised if they went to Aiden O'Connell. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe made a trade for another guy. I don't know if they can make a trade actually. I don't think they want to do that. They're probably just gonna ride the guys. But like, not to be a homer, but like Cam Miller, the guy they've had on the practice squad, North Dakota State, two-time national champion. I feel like that could be a good spot where he already got the Brady endorsement. That's good. Where if the Raiders are like truly out of it, that maybe we're in develop mode and see what we can bring into the future for, the Raiders and what we're going to build around. I don't think it's Geno Smith. I'll say that. As bad as Gino's been, it's truly mind-boggling this offense doesn't revolve around Genty soon. Especially with Brock Bowers being hurt, especially with, it's basically Jacoby Myers and like a bunch of riffraff around him. Trey Tucker, probably miss me with Trey Tucker. Miss me with Jack Besh, miss me with Dante Thornton, although he does pass the vibe check. It's an offense that needs talent. Like Jacoby Myers is totally fine as like a second option, but when you're looking at him as like your number one wide receiver, I think that's where you're into some big problems. So like for them to go get a wide receiver in the draft, I think is like they need to do it, but they also need a lot more than that wide receiver too. So Ashton Genty, I think it will be totally fine going forward. I just worry about some of the offensive environment issues. Run through these a little bit quicker because I think I've already spent 20 minutes or only at 5. Jonathan Taylor. Famously, I have called him 2025's 2024 Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Taylor has been awesome this year. And I think a lot of that has to do, Jonathan Taylor is one of the most, he's one of the best running backs in the National Football League to begin with. And then you get the offensive environment of him in this offense with Daniel Jones that's running a lot of the RPO stuff. I'm very interested. I just got him in a guillotine league, I think for like $780 in the Reddit versus the world one, where I am trotting out H.N. and Trevion Henderson. Famously a guy that I would probably not draft just because I'm drafting wide receivers there. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor has been fantastic the last 3 weeks, last 4 weeks, actually. Obviously, he had that 165-yard game. Then he had 3 touchdowns week 3 against Titans. Another 3 touchdowns today, a little bit less efficient, less than 4 yards per carry, but still 3 touchdowns. You love to see it. The Colts are scoring. Jonathan Taylor is going to be part of that party. When you're looking at some of the advanced stuff for Jonathan Taylor, I am very interested. You're looking at a very high rush yards over expectation there. Success rate is great. What is not to love about Jonathan Taylor, a guy that's getting massive volume that I think they worked in a little because of the blowout in their game against the Raiders. They did work in a lot more of, some of the other guys there, whether it's DJ Giddens. I was today years old when I found out Amir Abdullah is on that team and was getting a couple carries, some touches in that game, the 40-6 game. So that was wild to me to see Amir Abdullah still alive. But that just goes to show you not everything is going to be, super clean there. But Jonathan Taylor is one of the most bankable running backs in the National Football League. So for that, I think he also gets an A+. He's on tap with him. And, I think Javonte, certainly the early season league winners, guys that have really propelled your fantasy teams for sure. Good for Amir Abdullah. Nebraska legend, by the way, Amir Abdullah. Should have been Detroit Lions legend, Amir Abdullah. Still getting an NFL paycheck. You'll love to see it. Going over to the next running back here, Derrick Henry. Yeah, hasn't been super great for our boy just because we, certainly with Lamar Jackson getting hurt, it has not been great for Derrick Henry in terms of like staying on the field because he has been game scripted quite a bit. We're looking at 5 yards per carry, but a lot of that is because of that 18 for 69 game or 169 game against the Buffalo Bills. If you, other than that, I mean, you're looking at some pretty bad, let's see, 12 for what? That's what's the total on that? Because I want to know his yards per carry outside of that game. 148. So that's like 12. No, it's not 12. 46. 46 for 148. Napkin math. That's less than 3 yards per carry, I'm pretty sure. Or at least close to that. That's not great. So, look, this offense is not going to be great with Cooper Rush. We're hoping to get Lamar Jackson back, but even then, outside of that first game, 2.1 yards per carry, 4.2, 5.3, 2.2. I don't want to say that we're getting to the end of the road here with Derrick Henry. I don't want to say that he's in the exit lane with the blinker on. But I do think that you're starting to see, a 3.2. I was just trying to do some napkin math. I'm a product of the New York State public education system. So look, I'm already behind the 8 ball as it is. But looking at like Derrick Henry is just not, he's fine. He's an RB2, but he's not, where we've expected him to be. And I do think that going forward, I think we are at kind of a crossroads with Derrick Henry. We have to, we just have to kind of update our priors with Derrick Henry. There's a reason that guy a guy like that was going in the second round, not the first round, because we're all kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So, Derrick Henry, I do think can be like totally fine as like an RB2 going forward. But in terms of like what we've had in the first 5 weeks of the season outside of that first game, C-. I'm a little bit scared of like, not only that, but we got some of the first Keaton Mitchell run this season. Famously, the Chris Johnson that the Baltimore Ravens have had stashed on their practice squad, and haven't given carries to until last week. He is alive. So the fact that they're working in Keaton Mitchell, and obviously Justice Hill has had a big workload. I think it's a little bit telling that, hey, maybe we're not getting what we've gotten out of Derrick Henry. Maybe the team is finally recognizing that. And I think fantasy managers need to like look at a guy like Derrick Henry and be like, okay, well, he's not what he was. Like he's a brand name. And I disparage him because he was famously against zero RB a few years ago. So nothing personal, but it's all business, Derek. If you're watching, you're probably not, but let's go over to Woody Marks, a very polarizing name. We added him en masse as the top waiver wire player last week. And then, lo and behold, the Houston Texans still wanted to get Nick Chubb well involved. So it's a little bit scary in terms of like, we still want to get Nick Chubb, who has been off, who has barely a knee on the field. So I'm a little bit skeptical that Houston doesn't know what wide receivers they want to get on the field. They're still giving Xavier Hutchinson 72% of the routes, and not putting guys like Jalen Noel, even though he scored a touchdown on the field. Jaden Higgins, who scored a touchdown last week, that getting him on the field. Look, Woody Marks is getting on the field 41% of the snaps, 37% of routes. But as far as like the workload, 12 opportunities for Chubb, 8 for Woody Marks. Woody Marks wasn't that efficient. Nick Chubb had the touchdown. So I do think it's going to be shaky going forward. I don't think last week's Woody Marks blow up is what we can expect, week in, week out. I think that's a bit unrealistic, even though we were kind of doing that. The 17 for 69, a touchdown, 4 for 50 and a touchdown. That was all last week, 119 total yards, 2 touchdowns. But this offense is not going to be they're not going to get to play the Baltimore Ravens every week. They're not going to be able to get to play the Tennessee Titans every week. Although they are going to play them twice. Now they're on bye this week, so obviously you're not starting Woody Marks this week. But going forward, let's see, at Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, Jacksonville. At Seattle, certainly. San Francisco, Denver, very tough there. So you're probably looking at a spot for Woody Marks where you're relying on like a lot of more of the receiving stuff with him, and then just Nick Chubb to take some of the empty calorie touches. But Nick Chubb is going to be annoying in the fact that he's going to be like the first option in the run game, like kind of like where we were before the Bucky Irving stuff last season, where it was Rachaad White, and it took them a little bit to get off the Rachaad White until Bucky Irving forced the hand. That's probably where we're going to have to be with Woody Marks, to where he's going to have to keep repeatedly forcing the hand to really get what we want out of him. The fact that we probably spent a good 20% of our fab on a guy like Woody Marks, like I think the returns are yet to come. I just don't think they're going to be immediate. Obviously, this week is a prime example of that, where they were obviously well up on Baltimore and then salted away a lot of the stuff with Nick Chubb. I think Woody Marks works a lot better in neutral game scripts and obviously trailing scripts too. Think of it like an upgraded Justice Hill, where Woody Marks is getting on the field, no doubt. But if it's like 24-7 in the middle to the end of the third quarter, that's going to be prime Woody Marks. Like that's going to be his bread and butter. That's where he's going to get a lot of like some of the receiving stuff. And then he's going to be used, obviously, when it's like neutral in the beginning of the game as like a change of pace on Chubb. Now, Chubb's not going to just keep the efficiency. That's the thing. So you're hoping, if you want like the nut outcome for Woody Marks, you're hoping Chubb is inefficient, Marks is efficient on early downs. If he can work into some of those carries, then we're really cooking with gas. But right now, I think the most predictable range of outcome for Woody Marks is that he's Justice Hill, but upgraded, getting on the field. And obviously they're not the Baltimore, offensive full strength, but the fact that you can still get on the field, you're getting receiving stuff, you're getting occasional early down stuff. And then once the neutral script or like trailing script happens, that's going to be Woody Marks time rather than Nick Chubb time. So I think that's a pretty good parallel there to use with Baltimore's offense and how they've, obviously worked in Derrick Henry and Justice Hill the last couple seasons. Yeah. Speaking on this, actually, D'Amico Ryan, Nick Chubb, Woody Marks, used his game plan and flow, game dependent, RB coaches, large input. Yeah. So, I mean, that's nothing you want to be like for fantasy wise in terms of like, we want definitive stuff. We want the situation known, and that's going to, it sucks that we don't have that. So yeah, I do think it's going to be very, obviously D'Amico Ryan's already saying it's game dependent. So not super great, that he's talking about that now. But like, look, Nick Chubb is a brand name. We love Nick Chubb. We love that he came back. But yeah, that's where the Woody Marks in like a best ball format is awesome. So yeah, it's an absolute headache to predict. That's why, I drafted a little bit of Woody Marks in best ball, where that's been pretty good. I don't want to have to deal with putting him in a lineup though. So I do think there is, it stinks. So for that, I am going to give him a C+, where I still think it's a little incomplete, but I think he can eventually win out, just knowing what we know about Nick Chubb and his injury history and just some of the lack of efficiency that has happened to him based on that. So Christian McCaffrey, is that guy any good? Many are saying that Christian McCaffrey is going to be breaking fantasy. Sorry, that spot is already well reserved for Puka Nacua to do, but you can have your run here. Look, he scored his most receiving fantasy points this week when he was already like wide receiver 6 in if you took out his rushing stuff. He is averaging 19.1 fantasy points per game as in just receiving stuff. If you were on Reddit last week about this time, I did actually put that up there in terms of what his fantasy points per game were. He is wide receiver 5 behind Jackson Smith and Jigba, ahead of Garrett Wilson in just receiving stuff. Like his 19.1 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 5. Now, and he's averaging 24.8 fantasy points per game. He's the only person that stayed healthy. Yeah, CMC is a health vampire. No 49er can be healthy. CMC needs their health. Yeah, feed off of Juwan Jennings, feed off of Ricky Pearsall, feed off of George Kittle, feed off of all those guys. Yeah, CMC has been awesome. The way he's been used is that's like what Austin Eckler's usage was, just like on steroids. We know the efficiency is not going to be there on the ground. It certainly hasn't. 3.1 yards per carry, 4.2, 3.1, 2.9, 2.6 in 5 games this season. 3.1 yards per carry total. 91 rushes, 282 yards. But almost 50 targets, 49 targets, 39 catches, 387 yards, 3 touchdowns. You can't argue with it. Like, if you're in standard, it sucks because you're not getting, 39 more fantasy points. Or like half PPR, you're getting 19 and a half. But look, if you're in full PPR, you're getting that 24.8 fantasy points per game. You are loving life. I don't see how he can be anything but an A+. And there's a couple more I think there's one more A+ going for in the rest of this list. And let's take a look here at who we got. It's Alvin Kamara, the opposite of Christian McCaffrey, a guy that has been a receiving running back du jour. He's been awesome. But the fact that now in this Kellen Moore offense, he is not as prioritized in the receiving game. I mean, he still got 20 targets, 17 catches for 77 yards. I think he's fine. He's fine RB2 like Derrick Henry. But he is definitely a brand. The brand names are strong today. Because it's time to, we have to get into some of the hard truths here with some of these guys that we have to, after 5 weeks, we have to update our priors. Man, Kamara. And Kamara less than 4 yards per carry. I am a bit spooked by like some of the the metrics in terms of like NFL Next Gen stat stuff. Where he's been like just pulling that up here. Like he's always been pretty efficient. Obviously, up until 20, he has been a negative rush yards over expected running back every single season since 2022. I don't think a lot of people realize it. He's just been pure volume on the ground, where he had his second most carries that he's ever had. I'm pulling it up here. Yeah, second most carries here, 228. He's been negative 38, negative 99, negative 35, negative 39, but a lot of that's been mitigated by the receiving stuff. And now if you don't have the receiving stuff, like what can you do? Like dude was basically like a wide receiver 3 and an RB1 in the same body. We're looking at 77, 86, 89 targets the last 3 years. Now he's still running routes. He's just not being targeted as much. 21 targets. I think that the targets are a little bit my targets that I'm pulling up are from PFF. I think a lot of their target stuff is like a little bit skewed based on their charting. So I believe that's why I had it 21. Okay, but sometimes it can be different there. But yeah, in terms of like targets per route run, 14.9%. That's not good for a running back. Like looking at, I'm going to pull it up right here in terms of the season long stuff, like just for running backs, because obviously Devon Achane, obviously CMC are all crushing it there. But in terms of running backs, like the position, sorry, I'm just trying to get through here. Targets per route run. Like we're looking at guys like CMC, 26.9 targets per route run. I can't pull this up right now, but because it's on a separate window. But some of the leaders, like through 5 games, Jahmyr Gibbs, 25.3 yards per route run. Justice Hill, Cam Scatterbo, like when they're on the field, they're being targeted in the receiving game. Alvin Kamara is one of the worst of like qualifying backs. I think I have it set to where it's like a minimum of 75 routes. But 14.9, 14.9%, 14.6%, not great for running back. That's like, and it's fine because guys like James Cook and Javonte Williams, that's not how they're getting there. But Kamara has always been a guy that's how he's gotten there. And if he's not getting the receiving stuff, he's a pretty mediocre RB2. So, on the spreadsheet, I'm sorry, I got to be the one to do it. He's a big fat D. And not in a good way. That's what she said. Yeah, the PPR community drafts Kamara for the receiving numbers. Needs to take Rattler out for a nice steak dinner. I don't even know if it's Rattler. I think he has something to do with it there. He obviously has he's improved by like leaps and bounds from last season. But I do think that some of it is the design of like the Kellen Moore offense. So I'm a bit, I don't really have anything good to say about Alvin Kamara going forward other than like he's like an okay RB2 and you better hope he gets in the end zone because the Saints offense isn't that strong as it is. So I think there's a lot of heavy lifting that can be done here with Alvin Kamara, and I don't think he's like up to it right now at 30 years old. J.K. Dobbins. This is a tough one here because I could do another hour-long show on Sean Payton. Trust me. But he seems to have the guy that he wants, at least right now. And is Payton going to work in RJ Harvey? Absolutely. I think that's going to be a later season play. But for right now, for like J.K. Dobbins, you have to like what you're getting out of him. Obviously, a tough matchup against the Eagles, but still turns out 20 for 79. The touchdown, 5 yards per carry from J.K. Dobbins. He's still getting on the field a ton. And even like, he's never been a receiving back. But he's doing like okay, much better than where he was when he was in Baltimore, where he was allergic to a target, kind of like Gus Edwards. But yeah, J.K. Dobbins, I think is very interesting. Where obviously that's a guy you draft in like the 9th, 10th round, maybe a little earlier, but not too much earlier than that. Where you're getting so much return on value right now. You're getting a guy that's been plus rush yards over expectation every single week this season. And he's not faced like scrubs. Like he has faced scrubs. He, obviously played the Bengals in week 4. He had a game against the Titans in week 1. Colts, at Chargers, at Eagles. Week 2, week 3, week 5. At least 76 yards in those games, all with a touchdown. Like it's great to see what J.K. Dobbins is doing. And this is, if this guy could stay healthy, I mean, we were comparing Kenneth Walker to a guy like J.K. Dobbins that always had the long speed and was very efficient in terms of like per carry stuff, but just couldn't stay on the field. Now we're starting to get like what we've wanted out of J.K. Dobbins for literal years. And it's wild to me that I guess maybe it's not super wild because the Chargers did end up with Amari Hampton, and maybe that was the plan all along. But the fact that they didn't even like act like they wanted him at all after the season that he had, 4.6 yards per carry, 905 yards on almost 200 carries. The fact that 100 plus 115 rush yard over expectation on the season, by the way. And then, we're looking at also 3.8 yards after contact per attempt for J.K. Dobbins as well. Like, I think everything is coming up roses right now for Dobbins, and I guess the real worry is, when is it going to be more RJ Harvey? Where RJ Harvey has been a bit of an afterthought. He's kind of stayed stagnant. He did see his lowest snap percentage of the year, and perhaps that was because of the game script where they were in that kind of dogfight with the Eagles. So they wanted to make sure that they had a guy like Dobbins in there, that they know what they had, getting the known commodity, with what you're going to get production out of him. But yeah, so like the Dobbins stuff has been a very, very, very slow burn, kind of like Trevion Henderson. But I do think there's a path to where RJ Harvey can work in a little bit. Like, I know he got a lot of like the late run against Cincinnati when that game was well in hand. So I do think that that's kind of where we're leading. They have, let's see, the Jets, Giants, Dallas, Houston, Vegas, Kansas City, and then their bye. I mean, if Dobbins keeps producing like this, he could potentially just fend off RJ Harvey, and then RJ Harvey is, drafting him in the 5th round. Kind of stinks right now when you're looking at some of the other backs that obviously went well after, and the guys that he was going around are producing. So, yeah, kind of like, who? Never heard of that guy. Yeah, neither is Mike Vrabel, but here we are. But yeah, so going over to Dobbins, I mean, I do think there's some risk with the RJ Harvey stuff, where Sean Payton has like this idea of his mind. He's got it on like a schedule, but like, I mean, I'd even, you know what? No, it's a B+. I mean, I think it's really hard to not, give this guy his flowers for what he's done so far this season. To the next running back here, James Cook, who, it's interesting to see how Buffalo has managed their backfield over the last couple seasons, with James Cook like being very sparingly used on the field. Outside of, he's always been working in with like the Ray Davis, and he's worked in with some of the other like backs that he's shared with, but he's been like efficient on obviously per touch stuff, but he just hasn't gotten like time on the field to really accumulate stuff. And now we're seeing that this season with James Cook. And that's where we've gotten like the big glow up and the massive blow up here. Last 2 weeks, after 51% routes, 31 and 53, up to 68% routes and 63% routes. And then snaps, 57%, 47%, 67%, and then 73, 72%. Like, he is putting a huge gap between Ray Davis, him and Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, where like those guys are used, but very rarely. Like, Ray Davis has 3 carries in the last 2 weeks. Ty Johnson has 3 carries in the last 2 weeks, no catches. Like, it is all James Cook consolidating that work in the backfield, and he's been awesome at doing that too. Let me go over to, I had it pulled up here. I'm sorry. The full season running back stuff here, with rush EPA per game. Yeah, you're looking at James Cook right there, 3.7, right there with, of course, the immortal Rico Dowdle. I won't be talking about him extensively. I will just say that I do think his 200 yards is just a massive anomaly. But I do think he's like totally fine. I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't work in Trevor Etienne a little bit more. But obviously with Dowdle, you're riding the lightning with 200 yards. So, far be it for me to give my thoughts on that. But I think Dowdle's like fine as like a fill-in. You're not going to get 200 yards every week. But back to Cook. Yeah, you're getting awesome stuff from Cook here. In terms of like, 7th in rush yards over expectation over the season. 5 yards per carry. Success rate, 46.7%. Excellent among all qualified running backs. Like, looking at just like this list, and of course this is the success rate. the percentage of carries that you're providing positive EPA. If you're all in this year, chill. I'd be Ibuka. I mean, it's hard to argue with the production, where like the dude puts up 160 yards and a touchdown. Like a touchdown is almost a guaranteed thing with Ibuka, but yeah, you got to ride the wave with Emeka Ibuka. But going back to James Cook, you know, he's consolidated work. He's been efficient with it. He's in a great offense. It's very hard for me to say anything bad about James Cook in this role. Maybe when the weather starts to turn a little bit colder, maybe they get some of the other backs involved, but I don't think that's going to be anything meaningful for taking off the top of James Cook. So I think he's just a good solid A right now. And that ding is, I guess, some of the worry where the weather turns colder. Maybe they want to get a little more size with Ray Davis, like taking some of the early down stuff. And here's a back that, look, how Cleveland fell into Nick Chubb twice is beyond me. That's pretty much where we're at with Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins has been awesome. Like, efficiency-wise, he's consolidated work. He has made Dylan Sampson obsolete. Like, so Jerome Ford's going to be like, he's going to be around. He's going to be somewhat relevant in terms of real-life NFL, pass pro, and all that. But, dude, 4.8 yards per carry. He's only ramped up his efficiency. Like, we're 10 for 61. We're like, okay, good start at Baltimore, by the way. But it doesn't matter the matchup. He's had, 18 for 94, one against Green Bay. At Detroit, 21 for 82 and a touchdown, adding 4 catches for 33 yards. And then Minnesota, what Brian Flores, defense, 23 for 110, no touchdown. But still, the fact that he's had over 70% of the running back, the team rushing attempts in the last 3 games says everything you need to know. Now you're at Pittsburgh, Miami. He's become it doesn't matter who he's playing. You just start him. He's independent of matchups. Yeah. And then this on top, the cherry on top of the Quinshon Judkins stuff. The 2 needless holding calls. Welcome to football, by the way. Where a holding call can cost you hundreds of dollars. Thank you, Adnai Mitchell, by the way, last week for that one. But yeah, Judkins has been awesome. Let me pull this up here. He gets another A. I do think he continues to consolidate that work. A couple more backs here that I do want to talk about. Our Carson Steele King, Cam Scatabo. Now, Devin Singletary is one of the best pass protection running backs in the National Football League. So he is not going away. But it was nice to see that in that matchup against the New Orleans Saints that they pretty much built the plane around Cam Scatabo. He wasn't as efficient. I don't think the efficiency is going to be like quite there every week. But the fact that still put up 59, you still put up over 100 yards, 6 catches for 45 yards. I think the receiving stuff there is very big for a guy that this offense needs pass catchers, whether it's Wandale, Darius Slayton, Theo Johnson. Like, I think Cam Scatabo is probably better than at least 2 of those guys in terms of like actual receiving ability. And then, Jackson Dart being able to be a threat on the ground is only going to help with some of the efficiency stuff with Cam Scatabo on the ground. And then obviously through the air as well, where if Dart is like, leaking out, he can just hit Scatabo quick or like an angle route or something like that. Should you start Tyquan Thornton or Juju? Probably would start Juju. I think there's much more route upside. Obviously, the big plays can be there for Tyquan Thornton. Xavier Worthy is expected to play with his shoulder/ankle. But I think that's interesting as far as like Juju is still getting quite a bit of routes, but the routes are pretty spread out through a lot of those guys there. So yeah, let's go back to Descatabo. The offense is not great. I think we all know that. Obviously, without Malik Neighbors, this offense takes a pretty big step back. Jackson Dart is doing his best to kind of bring it back a little bit. Scatabo is going to be a massive part of that. Tyrone Tracy obviously is going to be a bit part of this offense. I do think you can't pull Scatabo back to bring Tracy forward, like not where we've seen what we've seen. So right now, I do think it's a bit incomplete, but it's a B plus especially from the receiving standpoint of this is what you're getting out of Cam Scatabo on an offense that's not great with like not the most clean like profile in terms of running backs, but you got to love that. And then I wanted to save the best for last, of course. Saquon Barkley, another brand name. Look, people were paying for 2024's production in drafts this season as a mid-ish first round pick. People were pumping him up to like second, third overall. I know a lot of people like to go one for one with the production stuff with Saquon Barkley. I do think that look, teams are different year to year. The 2024 Eagles are different from the 2025 Eagles. And I don't think it's very fair to like just go like one for one and just expect what we expected in 2024. And obviously Barkley has been nothing close to what he was in 2024. Just going back to what we're looking at 3.2 yards per carry. He had a pretty good game yesterday, but the Eagles barely ran the ball. He only got 6 carries. He had, I think, 1 carry in the second half for Barkley. Like they went so far away to where I think it was a bit from Nick Sirianni after AJ Brown and Devonta Smith talked up about not getting, used in the offense, to where since they lost this game, now Sirianni's going to be like, see, this is what happens. We'll just let us run the offense. So I do think we're going to be seeing a lot more Saquon Barkley. I just don't know if we're going to be able to get the efficiency that we've gotten. Like Saquon Barkley's fine. Like he's totally fine as like a running back. But in terms of his like yeah. It's the peach iced tea thing from The Office. Like peach iced tea, you're going to hate it. That's what the passing game was. But in terms of qualified rushers in success rate, dead last, right behind Christian McCaffrey in success rate. 34.9% of Saquon Barkley's runs have been positive EPA plays, lowest among all 35 qualified backs. The bottom 5 is Saquon Barkley, CMC, DeAndre Swift, Devon Achane, Tyler Algier. Pacheco's next. Nick Chubb's not far behind. Kamara's not far behind. That's a far cry from where we were last season. Saquon Barkley's also minus 28 rush yards over expectation this season. His expected yards per carry, 3.6. He is at 3.2 right now, so he's below that as well. Like, this offense is not what it was, and I don't know what's going to fix it. But, I mean, I wanted to give Saquon Barkley an F. I probably should have. But I guess I can be nice because Saquon Barkley is still like is decently in terms of volume. He's still running back 9. So he's not like totally dead at all. Like he's like a fine start any week. But you just have to know like the wheels are coming off a little bit at this point with Barkley. So I gave out my grades for 16 of 15 running backs today. I was nice. I was not so nice, but I just hope we all had fun. In an hour or so, Typically, we do the Express on Sunday nights. My computer did not want to cooperate. So we're going to be doing that, myself and Nate Polvote, in about an hour. We are on the road, by the way, to 500 subs. And if we are not there, we are very close. I think we're like 5 away at my last check here. But go check us out, Optimus Fantasy. Click the subscribe button if you haven't. Click the like button if you haven't. That would really help us out here. Stay tuned. In about 55 minutes, back on this channel, myself and Nate Polvote will be talking about every single game on the Sunday slate for week 5. I'm Kevin Tompkins. This has been Clock Management. We'll see you soon here next week.